I can wing it without switching sides. It's not let. All right, it's not letting me. But yeah, I can wing it. I got it.
Everything working?
Yeah, we got it going. It's just for some reason it's not letting me switch the camera control. He told me, which you're supposed to do this and then press this, and then it's supposed to switch the camera control and have the camera. But for some reason, when I started the stream, it doesn't let me.
Oh,
And I did it before
right.
I tested it, and then I tried to he's like, "Oh, you do that," and I was like, "Yeah, well, I did it, but it's knocked out the camera." It doesn't really matter. I can do it.
Weird.
Yeah, it's strange. Which was happened to me last time I was here, and I was like, it was weird. But the reason I know it's screwy is because I tested it. You know, I've had every single one working just perfectly fine as soon as I started the stream.
Well, luckily, pretty much everything is going to happen at 40. So,
It doesn't matter because I can reach with this camera wide and then this camera on hand, I can reach. They might just have a little bit of a weird but this should.
no, whatever.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
exactly. I don't know why it's locked up, but good thing I mean, working it out now. I mean,
At least you know ahead of
right.
time.
And I swear, last time I was here happened to me too, and I was like, what the heck? I swear I know how to do this. Not switching it for some reason.
Huh. New technology. It's only useful when it works, which I know all too well.
It'll still work really good, but this makes my job harder. Or maybe easier.
I suppose it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody. I just want to start by welcoming you to the 101st annual meeting of the electors of the West Bend Joint School District Number 1. And the format of this meeting is different than a typical school board meeting, and that's because this isn't a school board meeting. This is actually the meeting of electors. And so if you registered in the back of the room as a resident, you get to vote. And I'm going to be asking for several votes tonight, and so I'm going to be putting you to work. And when you vote, I'll ask you to vote by voice. If the vote is close, I may ask you to stand for a yes or stand for a no so that your vote can be counted. So we'll begin. Again, I've called this to order. So the next item on our agenda would be to approve the agenda. And in the packet that you were given, it has the agenda. So what I would ask for is a motion from the floor to approve the agenda. We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. So the next item would be the presentation of the proposed budget, and that'll be handled by Mr. Andrew Sarno, our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations.
Thank you for this opportunity, and as President Zweigert indicated, this is a meeting for the community, hence why we're positioned just a little bit different this evening. I do appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. I will try to be brief. I do understand that it's not everybody's favorite topic, yet it is we're talking millions of dollars to operate the programs and services which the district provides to children. It is important to make sure that we understand this. So. As this is a statutory required meeting, that's why we are here tonight. Statute 65.90 dictates that we will have this meeting during a certain period of time with sufficient notice and whatnot. And as I indicated, this really is for your ability to learn about the district, not just with the budget, but the follow-up meeting 30 minutes from now with the state of the district. So we appreciate the opportunity to share this with all members of the community. Whether you're in person or at home. Just a little bit of housekeeping information. This information in front of you is effectively current as of September 10th. That's because when you start backing up from this evening to when the publications are required at least 10 days in advance, Class 2 notice, we have a lot of assumptions that are still there. We're making calculated estimates. But just as an example, one of the pieces of information that is yet to be finalized, the 18th was the third Friday count. That is due to the Department of Public Instruction by this Friday, October 2nd. And so that's just one piece that's still finalizing. So there's assumptions that are built into this. Property values until the Department of Revenue shares final numbers on October 15th. So please just remember that because these numbers will change. A lot of the things that drive the information in front of us are still estimates at this point in time. A final budget will be brought forward, including a levy, which is the dollar amount, as well as a final mill rate on October 26th. So that will be brought forward to the board for their final approval. Much of the resolutions that we'll talk about at the 7 o'clock meeting are advisory. There's one piece that is binding, and we'll talk about that at that point in time. It's a note, but we will be bringing this final information to the board on October 26th. And just keep in mind, and I did include as a part of the handout from the Department of Public Instruction, just a little bit of information is that the budget is a living document. It's meant to evolve and change and meet the needs of an organization or a household as things change. And so between now and then October 26th, and then by June 30th, I believe that we will be bringing an amended budget forward. We did it this last year in June, and I would estimate that things will change and we'd be bringing an amended budget this spring, as we typically do. Just what is all included in the packet this evening, I have what I call the shell, and that's an 11 by 17 paper. It talks about the two agendas tonight, a little bit of information about us. On the back, I like to celebrate kids. This is why we're here. This is why we do what we do. So just a few of the graduation pictures from both East and West from this past summer. A little bit of our district continuous improvement plan. And then if you open up that shell, there's 5 graphs. And again, we're celebrating younger kids here at their, I think this is the Green Tree Thanksgiving last fall. But there's 5 graphs that kind of tell a financial story. And so I will be getting into those. That's actually a part of the presentation. Yep. And then inside the shell itself, so that's the shell on the outside. Inside of the shell is the annual budget publication. We have resolutions that are included. That will be a part of the 7 o'clock meeting. These pieces are the stapled portion that's inside, just on 8.5 by 11. It also has the procedures for the meeting, which President Zweigert will be reading as well a little bit later. There's a budget hearing publication that was published on September 16th as well as September 23rd per Class 2 notification. So that's in there, and I will be going over that right after my presentation. And then as well, one of the other big pieces is the revenue limit calculation. So it's a Department of Public Instruction spreadsheet that calculates all of our history, our property values, the levy, and then it calculates that final mill rate or the taxation rate. So all of that's included and kind of helps wrap that story up that we're telling tonight. So we've already called the meeting to order. We have an approved agenda. I'm in the middle of a presentation. After I get done sharing this, we will open this up. There's comment cards on the back for either questions or comments. Would you be okay, sir? I'm acknowledging if somebody doesn't fill one out that they could come to one of the microphones and please share there. And then we would have a motion to adjourn by the attendees, resident attendees. Thank you. Mission, preparing all students for college readiness and career success. Vision is excellence for all. Why that's important is because between our budget drivers that help us understand where we prioritize, as well as making decisions, that all comes into play in helping making sure that we're getting return on our investment, which the return on our investment is making sure that kids receive that education that will take them to their future. This is one of the first graphs, which is our students, and as I indicated on the 18th, we had our third Friday count that's well underway. This is really what determines, we take the number of students, our members, and multiply that by a dollar amount, which is our revenue limit. But it's estimated in the third Friday count, as well as our summer school. And this, like I said, this is our membership. It's not necessarily our enrollment, the butts in the seats, like I call it. It's all of those residing in the district. And the reason I say that is because open enrollment does fluctuate in and out, so it's actually the residents of the district plus that summer school count. We do have a little bit of a declining enrollment that's expected to continue for another 5 or 6 years. The kindergarten grades for the last couple of years have stabilized, but we do anticipate that declining enrollment will continue for a few more years. Funding from the state, and I like to think of the revenue limit. So there's a dollar amount that we're allowed. It dates back to 1993 when we were capped at a certain dollar amount per child. And what they do is they multiply that by the number of students on a 3-year average. And really that's our revenue limit. 2 big sources of money that are funds that come in. It's really our revenue limit minus the state aid. So here I'm talking about our general state aid history. It does fluctuate based on property values, the number of students. There's some variables. It's actually a 3-tiered formula. I'd love to have a couple hours at some point to go over that a little bit. But the state aid it's a 1-tiered leg. It's based on how much property value per student we have, and they calculate that under a 3-tier formula. I am estimating, again, because we do have declining enrollment as well, we have increasing property values, which I'll show in a moment, approximately a 4% decrease in our state aid. Our property valuation, so again, this is that one-tiered or one-legged stool that we have that really determines that state aid component. And we can see that last dip from the recession dating back almost a decade. The residual effect of that, and then a fairly consistent increase ranging from 2 to 7% over the last couple of years. The 6.12% is an estimate. Baird, our financial analysts, do estimate that for us. They do that for all districts across the state. So again, this is the Department of Revenue. October 15th, we'll be providing that final information. Baird is generally pretty close, but that's an estimate at this point in time. Our property tax levy, so again, that full revenue limit minus the state aid equals the property tax levy, which is the dollar amount. And if state aid were to decrease, our property levy would need to increase, assuming that constant of the full revenue limit. So again, as we've calculated out based on that revenue limit worksheet that I've included in your packet, estimating about a 6.13% based on the assumptions that we've made at this point in time. Again, it's subject to change by October 26th, but estimating about a 6% increase in the dollar amount that will be coming from our property owners in our district. Our mill rate, so this is the percentage or the taxation rate when you take our levy at approximately 45 million and you divide that out by our $5.5 billion, you come up with a taxation rate. So this is the amount of money that's paid every per $1,000 of assessed value. For 3 years in a row now, as proposed, and again, subject to change, but as proposed, taxation rate being the same at $7.97 for the third year in a row. And historically, you can see that it has been a little bit higher over the course of the last few years. Again, dependent on different variables like property value and the revenue limits and some different things like that. But I'm happy to report that taxation rate, everything that's slated right now, and we do have some flexibility with that. I'll talk about the defeasment in a little bit, but keeping that flat. We've gotten through those graphs that I kind of shared, and that tells a little bit of the financial picture, and we'll see that in a moment when I go over the publication with some highlights and some notes that I included dating back to the September 14th meeting. We went over it in pretty good detail, but this meeting is required to have a few additional, I'll call them supplemental and required information. We'll talk about fund balance, or what private sector calls equity, existing debt, statutory debt, so how much we have versus what we could incur. Our OPEB, which is called our other post-employment benefits, we have that in a designated trust. I have to give a little bit of an update on that. Our community services fund, which is another fund, 80. These are things that we do outside of a typical school day with children. Could be adults, but we only have children in these services right now. And then as well, I just want to talk about some assumptions and whatnot leading into that October 26th meeting. So our equity, or our fund balance, this is a sign of fiscal health by school districts, as well as by other organizations, whether it's the debt rating agencies and whatnot. We do have a board policy 646 that talks about a policy fund balance being between 14 and 18%, and we are within that range right now. Likewise, though, one of the reasons that we do have that, it's not just for fiscal health, but it's for meeting any unforeseen needs, any expenditures that might arise that we don't have budgeted, but it's also for cash flow. And so a large piece of that is making sure that we're able to meet our financial obligations, because the money coming in as revenues does not always equate to the money going out as expenditures. So there is a point, last year we had a line of credit for $2.5 million. We used it for the period of about 6 days. We had a payroll on a Thursday, and we got a large chunk of money in from the state on a Monday. So we needed, for just that short of a period of time, we're going through an estimate right now of what we might need for the current year, and I would anticipate that we're going to be bringing that forward for board approval coming in October, maybe early November. So I do anticipate needing that cash flow for 2021. Our current fund balance is at 18%. That was as of June 30th or July 1st. That snapshot in time as a part of our audit from this past year. It does include $2.25 million, what we're calling the Jackson Trust, which is if we ever did anything down at that building or down in that community with a school, we could use that. It's in a reserved account specifically for that item. We are also self-funded, and so with our health insurance, and we do also include $3.2 million of reserved for any future losses where any of those claims or actual use of health insurance would exceed what we collect on an annual basis. Audited fund balance allocations will be brought forward. That's actually a part of the audit, and it will be brought forward either in October or November for formal board acknowledgement and approval. Our S&P, or our Standard & Poor's rating right now, is a AA negative, which is actually a positive thing. It's the top tier of their rating matrix. I did include that in the link. Like I said, it's just really important to have a solid financial health. And as we look at our existing debt, you can see that in the favorable, at the point of time where that debt was sold, that it was very favorable interest rates because of that debt rating. A little bit of information, we've gone over a lot of this in detail. I know this last spring, even last fall, but our debt as of July 1st, 2020, we had a little bit of discussion on the 14th, 2 weeks ago about this, but that information that I did share with the board actually took off some interest payments because those were already made. So this may vary because it's as of July. I want to make sure we stay with that snapshot. But our principal, non-referendum principal and interest is about $3.5 million. Our referendum, which is community approved debt, is about $22 million. But we can take off already defeased amounts, so we've levied dollars that will be used for that referendum debt. $8.25 million. There's another $2.25 million as a part of the current year budget, but total outstanding principal and interest right now of the district is $25 million. What's our debt capacity? It's 10% of our total property values, which is $5.5 billion. So technically our district could incur $558 million, almost $559 million of debt. Again, when you take a look at our $25 million of debt, we're significantly under that. One of the other requirements, as I indicated, are other post-employment benefits trusts. So these are dollars that we're setting aside for retiree benefits. Beginning fund balance as of last summer was $2.8 million. We did we added an additional $2.3 million. We had expenditures last year of 1.4, so the current fund balance that's sitting in this for that liability is 3.7, almost $3.8 million. We did just have an actuarial study that's required every 2 years. The existing liability that exists is 9.9 million, so 9.9 minus the 7.6, 3.7. So we're looking at about a $6 million outstanding liability in that area. So the district has contributed to that on a fairly regular basis. We're addressing that liability, and there was a change made several years ago that has financially helped the district as well. Our Fund 80, which is our community services fund, again, these are programs and services offered to our students outside of a typical school day. We have a Badger Middle School co-curricular. This is where we offer it to any private school, homeschooled students. We're allowed to code it in this area. The proposed budget's $95,000 for those sports and co-curriculars. We do code our school resource officers $180,000 for those individuals. Our before and after school offerings to students, and this is where we offer programs and services. Again, they're not our before and after school care. These are actually programs, co-curriculars to children, $45,000. And then we do have a facility use where we forgive certain nonprofits and whatnot for their actual costs related to the facility usage. So we incur about $20,000 for that area. Total for Fund 80, our community services fund, is $340,000. It's possible the middle school sports may not start this year, and we may adjust this dollar amount between now and October 26th. If we still did levy those dollars, in a future year, we would just under levy to help offset that expenditure, to help balance that out. As well, and I should note, it's that second bullet on the bottom, our school resource officers, they have and they will continue to provide services, learning opportunities and whatnot to our private schools, which is a great service to be able to have. I was always told to not say in summary, but I'm going to say in summary. General fund, it's balanced. That's a key piece tonight. Our other funds do have fluctuations, and I'll talk about that just in a moment, but the surpluses and deficits, they're a part of typical budgets. That's to be anticipated. Everything that we can think of at this point in time, short of a large disaster or something like that, which we have coverage on the back end for, but everything that we can really think of to operate this year has been included both on the revenue and expenditure side. Third Friday count is well underway, and a lot of different things. Department of Revenue, Department of Public Instruction will be available on October 15th. I am happy to say, and again, I think I shared this on 2 weeks ago at the meeting, but our audit is well underway. Everything, the way that we account for our money, everything is very clean. Our chart of accounts, it reflects our state, federal requirements, site budget, which we're now starting to get into some of that data for the first time. That was a requirement for the current year. Things are accurately described being used. I'm really happy with the work that the budget holders, my team has done to bring that forward. Mill rate's anticipated to be flat at $7.97. That's a 3-year trend. Not to say that property taxes are held flat, because if property values have gone up, it's that taxation rate that's been flat. I would like to say that the 2021-2022 budget process, it's probably going to be about November 1st, 2nd that we're going to start taking a look at that. It's a part of a new biennial budget that historically over the last few budget cycles from the state, they don't really come up with final numbers until June, July, so that does add a little bit of difficulty. We'll need to be cautious. There are some things that we need to be aware of, is declining enrollment and whatnot, but we'll be as accurate with those projections and estimates as we can, and being able to roll that out to have some good discussion how we'd like to move forward for that next budget cycle. I'm just going to share a very brief, I don't want to read to you. This was a piece of information that we went through 2 weeks ago on the 14th in some great detail. It's, let me grab it real quick. If you open up that shell, we're going to then see a colored piece of paper, which is on 11 by 17 paper as well. That's the revenue limit worksheet. We don't need to talk about that tonight. If anybody does have any questions after the meeting or whatnot, I'd be happy to share that with you. I would like you to open up, though, that next piece of 11 by 17. And again, I think I'm starting to get to the point in my career where I either need to get longer arms or, the left half of the page is the actual publication that was made. Again, it was in the newspaper twice. The right-hand side of the paper, I've just documented. They're not numbered. They're only numbered numerically in order, but they're just little pieces of information. This is an area by fund. It's our projected budget for the current year, and again, it's subject to change when we bring this forward to the board on October 26th, but it's the budget at this point in time as of September 10th. We have last year's unaudited, but I think I captured about 99.9% of that because the audit is so well underway this year, but that is unaudited as well as 18-19's audited information. So that way you can see a 3-year trend, what's going on with the numbers. And really what this is it breaks it down by fund category. And it takes the beginning fund equity or fund balance plus revenues minus expenditures equals the ending fund balance. And so as we take a look at that, just as an example with the top section, I have it broken out with the black bold. General fund, you can see the beginning fund balance of $15.7 million, ending fund balance of $15.7 million, and that's where I've indicated we have a balanced general fund. So the money coming in and the money going out, I think we're being responsible with that. There's not a use. We did add approximately $500,000 last year. We didn't incur some expenditures that we originally anticipated a year ago because of COVID, and we were just really conservative with our spending last year. And so we were able to do some creative things with that, and that's where I spoke. We're protecting our state aid that's coming in this year based on what we did last year with some of those activities. Our special projects funds, that's our special education. We're the county seat for our Head Start program. We have some literally student dollars with clubs and activities that they've fundraised. That's where you'll see some fluctuations on that because some of that student money, when it comes and goes, they have some fund balance that helps absorb when they get money and when they spend money on their different activities. our debt services fund, we have a little bit of a fund balance that's been built up, and that's where I've talked about, so the third bold block down, we're now just about, per proposed budget, about $11 million of defeased money. So that's money that can be used for future debt payments. So I think we're being fiscally responsible in that sense, that we're addressing the community's needs. From what I heard when we went to referendum a year ago this last April is, let's address that. We already have a low debt ratio. Let's even be a little bit more assertive in getting that paid off. And that's what we're doing with that fund balance. Our capital projects funds, which is, we have two different trusts, Fund 41 and Fund 46. They serve different purposes with our funding mechanism, but we've been building up a little bit of a fund balance. All of those monies are available to spend. We do have a long-range facilities plan. We will have some facilities needs. We were talking a year ago about a potential referendum at some point. Those needs have not gone away, but we do have some money that's set aside. In fact, last year we even set a little bit more aside. As a part of one of the resolutions, I'm recommending that we decrease one of the funds a little bit, but that's even over the course of the 2 years, there's even more money that was there than anticipated. Bottom section, and again, I don't want to go over just the comments that I've written. Please read through that. Contact me if anybody has any questions, concerns. But as we take a look at that property tax, again, our levy is going up slightly because less money coming from the state, but that taxation rate, being able to hold that flat, I think should have some meaning at $7.97. I would like, typically this is where I'd ask if there's any questions, and if anybody's filled out a comment card, President Zweigert, if I could have you read them and we could answer questions. If somebody did not fill out a comment card, you're welcome to come on up to the microphone and we can answer questions for you specific to the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sarno. I'll ask one last time if there are questions or comments with regard to this proposed budget. We have two microphones in the front. Please step forward. I'll give anyone a moment who wishes to do that. All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing portion of this on the agenda, which takes us to adjournment of this public hearing of the 2020-2021 budget. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and a second on the floor to adjourn this public hearing portion. Any final discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. So we are adjourned with regard to the public hearing portion. If you'll just give us a moment, we'll shift gears here with our PowerPoint, and we will begin the annual meeting shortly. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It is past 7 p.m., and so I'm going to call to order the annual meeting of the electors. This is the 101st annual meeting of the electors of the West Bend Joint School District Number 1. My name is Chris Swigert, and I'm the president of the Board of Education, and I'm at least going to start out this meeting. Later on, we'll be electing a chairperson of this meeting. If we could, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you, everyone. And so in your packets, there is a document that lays out the ground rules for this meeting, which talks about how we would take votes and such. I invite you to consult that document, as that is how we will be conducting tonight's meeting. With that, it is time to elect a chairperson for this annual meeting. And so I would ask from the floor if there's a nomination for someone to act as chairperson of this meeting. There's a motion and a second on the floor to nominate Chris Swigert, myself, to act as chairperson of this meeting. I would accept that nomination. I will pause. Are there any other nominations for chair? I'll ask one more time. Any other nominations for chair? All right. Then why don't we, I would ask for a motion, please, to close the nominations. I hear a motion to close. Is there a second? Motion and second to close the nominations. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. So since the nominations are closed, I'm pleased to serve as the chairperson for your annual meeting. And so the next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda as it is published in your packets. And so I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We have an agenda. And so the next item on our agenda is to hear the State of the District report from Ms. Jennifer Wimmer, our Superintendent of Schools. So I'll invite her to the podium. Ms. Wimmer.
Good evening. This was just the agenda for your meeting today. Our budget is built, when we think about the state of the district, we talk about it in reference to the budget. It's built in a manner that makes connections and is clearly aligned to our goals. I think one of the biggest things in this year has been understanding, as Mr. Sarno talked about, perhaps some savings that were incurred as we shifted operations last year, how we account for that, but also as we look forward, the costs associated with the pandemic and our response. So we'll be budgeting and planning for, and as you saw, the impact on our economy, our future of funding, et cetera. So it's not just looking ahead into this next year, but our goals as a district are make sure that we're responsive and forecasting not just for the year in front of us, but for years ahead. I think the biggest cost, if you will, to us is the impact that COVID and pandemic planning is having on what would have been our other goals and where we put our focus and attention, and the other costs to our students. I think the reality right now, when you think about the current state of the district, is navigating the impact of quarantine, the impact of positive cases, and those pieces. We're working really hard with partners, whether it's locally, area districts, and our next board meeting will include representatives from both public health as well as our county executive. We want our kids to be in school. We want to continue to create that continuum of options, in person to full virtual. So when I think about the state of the district, it's doing everything in our power to ensure we have that full continuum, and the cost, if you will, to our students is that they have opportunity and that we're not positioned to having them miss things. I think that's been one of the things that you saw in this budget and our staffing, where we've put in more mental health support, other things, and I applaud our administrative teams as they work on getting creative with schedule designs, things like that. So we are solidly, when you think of, again, the state currently of our district, experiencing cases and quarantines to the point of just watching us put in some measures that are what we would call contingency measures, some alternate schedule design, some spacing of kids so that we can disrupt that and continue to provide in-person as well as full virtual options. So again, I will be inviting feedback from our community, our students over the next week in preparation for our board's conversation with our public health officers as well as our county executive. But the budget before you for this evening, again, is reflective of planning for things that we needed to put in place to be responsive this year and being able to plan for years ahead in the future. Mr. President?
Right, thank you, Ms. Wimmer. So the next item on our agenda then will be the consideration of several resolutions. And so before we begin, in your packet, there is a document titled Procedures for the Annual Meeting. And that document lists instructions as to who's able to vote and the methodologies that we would use. And so these are the procedures that we will use for this portion of the meeting. And I will guide us through those. So we have 4 resolutions for consideration. Let me see if I can get the computer here. There we go. So the first resolution is with regard to the tax levy. And as is noted in the notes section, the amounts that are contained in this resolution are currently estimates. So your approval as voters on this is non-binding, except for one item, and that is the amount applied to the Capital Projects Fund. That would be binding at this meeting. And as the notes further suggest, the final levy and mill rate recommendation will be brought forward to the school board for approval on Monday, October 26. So with that, I will read proposed resolution number 1. Resolution number 1, tax levy. Resolved by the electors of West Bend Joint School District Number 1, West Bend, Wisconsin, that there be and hereby is levied on the taxable properties within the confines of the district taxes in the amount of $44,549,084, including $6,723,918 to be applied on long-term debt obligations of the district, $1,100,000 to be applied to the Capital Projects Fund this year, $270,000 to be applied to the Community Services Fund, and the balance of $36,455,166 to be applied to the General Fund for the 2020-2021 school year in accordance with the recommendation of the school board. So that is the text of the proposed resolution. So at this point, I would ask for a motion in support of the resolution, in support of adoption of the resolution. Motion is made. Is there a second? Second. Motion is made and second in support of this resolution. We've now come to the opportunity for discussion. If anyone wishes to discuss this proposed resolution, I invite you to the front of the auditorium to speak at the microphones. I'll pause for a moment. And if you would, please state your name and verify that you are a resident of the district, please.
Yeah, Kurt Rebholz, resident of the district, 202 Aaron Court.
All right, Mr. Rebholz, please.
I would just like to note, thank you for the financial presentation of Mr. Sarno, Superintendent Wimmer, and the administration and all the staff here for being very conscious of all the tax dollars that we spend in this community. I call it some fun facts. You saw in the presentation, the average mill rate is $9.37. West Bend has a $7.97 mill rate that has remained constant for 3 years. $1.40 under. I'll maybe do some quick math in my final comment, but some area districts were very competitive with our Washington community. Slinger has a mill rate near ours. Then the rest of our districts are slightly higher. just even noting a couple of them, Germantown has a $9.81 mill rate from this prior year. Kewaskum has a $8.43 mill rate. So, but compare that to some mill rates, Sun Prairie, over $12. So how that relates to the average homeowner in, say, West Bend. For an average home between 200,000 and maybe 400,000, I know I'm giving a broad range, but you're talking $1.40 below the mill rate. You're talking anywhere from $280 to the $450 range, roughly. And check my math, Mr. Sarno, if I'm right. If you were a Sun Prairie or some of the higher mill rates in the $10, $11, $12 range, you're approaching $1,000 more in taxes on your home. So again, I just want to appreciate the financial presentation and being kind of fiscally conservative with our money while offering great services and having a great staff. So that's what comments I would like to make.
Ms. Rebels, thank you for those comments. Are there others who would like to make comments with regard to this, with regard to the resolution? All right, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of adoption of resolution number 1, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. Hearing none, this resolution is approved. We'll move to resolution number 2. Resolution number 2 is for disposal of district property, and as before, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1 is hereby authorized during the school year to sell or dispose of any property belonging to and not needed by the school district, provided, however, the sale of any individual piece of property whose estimated value is more than $5,000 shall require specific independent authorization by the school board, and provided further that the maximum aggregate value of all property sold without specific independent authorization by the school board shall not exceed $20,000 during the current fiscal year. And Mr. Sarno, I believe this is an identical resolution to what had been approved by this body last year, correct? Thank you for confirming that. All right, I would entertain a motion in support of the adoption of resolution number 2. Motion and second in support of adoption of resolution number 2. I will now ask for final discussion. If there are any individuals in this group who wish to comment or ask questions with regard to this, please come forward at this time. All right, seeing none, I will call the motion. All in favor of support of the in support of the adoption of resolution number 2, please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to resolution 3. And resolution 3 deals with and addresses board member compensation. And as you see in the notes, the current rate for members of the school board are $2,500 per year, $2,600 for officers. And this amount has been in place since the 2014 and 15 year, and you can see some prior history. And so the proposed resolution does not change the compensation as compared to last year. With that, I will read the motion. Resolution number 3, board member compensation. Resolved by the electors of West Bend Joint School District Number 1, West Bend, Wisconsin, that the salaries of the elected members of the school board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1, West Bend, Wisconsin, be fixed at the sum of $2,500 per year per member and $2,600 per year per officer. Be it further resolved by the electors of West Bend Joint School District Number 1 that board members be paid their actual and necessary expenses in traveling outside the school district in the performance of duties, including mileage at the rate established from time to time and by board policy, which rate shall not be greater than the maximum amount allowed by the Internal Revenue Service as a business deduction, and that when duties require school board members to be absent from regular employment, they may be reimbursed for actual loss of earnings in an amount per day as established from time to time by board policy. I'd ask for a motion in support of the adoption of resolution number 3. Motion and a second in support of the adoption of resolution number 3. It's now time for discussion. If there are any members of this body that wish to discuss resolution number 3, pardon me, please come forward at this time. All right, seeing none, I will call the vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to resolution number 4, which is the establishment of this annual meeting, but for next year. And so I'll read that resolution. Resolution number 4, 2020-21 annual meeting date. Resolved by the electors of West Bend Joint School District Number 1, West Bend, Wisconsin, that the 2021-2022 annual meeting date be set at 7 p.m. on Monday, September 27, 2021. I'd ask for a motion in support of the adoption of resolution number 4. Motion and second in support of the adoption of resolution number 4. I will now ask if there's anyone who wishes to discuss this motion. If so, please step forward at this time. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of the adoption of resolution number 4, please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, we have come to the end of our agenda, and so the last item on our agenda is adjournment. I would ask for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. If there's any final discussion, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Are there any opposed? The motion carries, and this 101st annual meeting of the electors stands adjourned. Thank you, everyone.